We are stretching out the gluten fibers. It's gonna be delicious. Of spinach, nice and small because you're feeding it to kids. Ooh, man, look at that. Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Rihanna, and today we are going to be turning my bomb diggity make-ahead dinner rolls into monkey bread. I posted the make-ahead dinner roll recipe right before Thanksgiving, and it was so popular. I knew it was going to make the perfect base for this easy take on cinnamon rolls, also known as monkey bread. Monkey bread is usually made by taking little bits of dough, either yeast bread dough or a quick bread like biscuit dough, rolling them in butter and cinnamon sugar, and then baking them all smashed together in a bundt pan. We are going to be taking half of this bread dough and we are going to be drenching it in this creamy melted cinnamon roll filling, and then the other half is going to be crusted in bacon bits and covered in cheesy spinachy egg mixture. Monkey bread was a Christmas tradition in my husband's house when he was growing up, so I wanted to take it and make it my own. We're gonna do 3 cups of white flour and just 1 cup of whole wheat.
Okay. This little jar I can't scoop in. Oopsie.
Riley's putting in 2 tablespoons of gluten flour, also known as vital wheat gluten. So the reason I do a mix of white and whole wheat flours is so that you get some of that like nutty depth of flavor from the whole wheat, but the white flour rises nicer. It just makes a nicer textured bread. And if I'm doing something very kind of breakfasty, you want it to be soft and pillowy, and that's why I use a higher ratio of white to wheat flour. The gluten flour is not necessary for this recipe, but it does add just a little bit of that extra gluten. Those gluten fibers are what are able to stretch out and make your bread rise. And we have 1 tablespoon of active dry yeast, 1 tablespoon of salt, and that's it for our dry ingredients.
What's our wet ingredients? Yeah. Just keep cutting. I got it. Good job. And it in here. A quarter cup of honey. You will do it.
And a quarter cup of melted butter. Last but not least, we have 3/4 of a cup of warm water and 3/4 of a cup of cold milk. The reason we want to make sure to use warm water this time is to kind of give our yeast a little kickstart, right? I'm going to still make this a make ahead, but I want it to do that first rise and shape it and have it in the fridge ready to go so I can bake it first thing in the morning. So that warm water is just going to kickstart the yeast a little bit. We're going to let that mix on low for 3 to 5 minutes until it all comes together, and then we'll kick it up a notch. So what we're doing when we're kneading the dough is we are stretching out the gluten fibers so that they are ready to stretch as the yeast expands and makes the bread rise. So whether you're doing it by hand or in the mixer, the goal is the same, is just to get it all stretched out and soft. Right now this is not quite ready to go because you can see as I stretch it, instead of stretching, those gluten fibers are just breaking. But it is getting close because when I push in on it, it starts to bounce back. That's what we want to see.
Roll it and squish it.
So what Jed was trying to do is called the window pane test. It's where you take a little piece of your dough and you stretch it up and see if you can see light through it. That is the test my mom always taught me to do. So it is what I taught my kids to do. Oh, do you see it?
Yeah.
The other test I heard recently to tell if your bread is done kneading is what was called the tug test, where you can pull it and stretch it out without it breaking like it's doing right now. All right, I think this is ready to go, so we're gonna let it rise for about an hour and a half, maybe 2. We just want to see it double in size while it's rising. I like to bake my bacon, so while our bread dough is rising, I'm gonna go ahead and get it in the oven. It's gonna be at 400 degrees for 15 to 20 minutes, and I'm just gonna put it on top of this cookie sheet so it still stays crispy and it's not just drowning in its own fat. So now for our sweet cinnamon rolly filling, we have a cup and a half. Nope, we have a stick and a half of melted butter, which is 3/4 of a cup of butter, 1 cup of brown sugar, should have thought that through, a 1/4 cup of heavy cream, 4 teaspoons of cinnamon, and then because I'm using unsalted butter, I'm gonna add almost half a teaspoon of salt, you know, yay much. You can probably skip that if you're using salted butter. It's gonna look funky for a minute until the cream and the butter mix together, but it's gonna be delicious. There we go. So for this half, we're gonna do 3 eggs, a 1/4 cup of milk or cream. I ran out of cream. Beat those up. Salt, pepper, about a cup of grated cheese, and a decent handful of spinach, all chopped up. Nice and small because you're feeding it to kids. Ends up being close to a cup once it's all diced down. I'm gonna mix all that together. Okay, we're gonna give this a good punch down and let the gluten fibers relax so that they have somewhere to stretch back to the next time it rises. Okay, one more way that we are going to deviate from normal is that instead of rolling out a bunch of little tiny balls of dough, we're going to roll it out into a sheet and just cut it out because it's gonna go so much faster. A little bit of flour so we don't stick. Doesn't have to be perfect, we just want it all to be about, I don't know, like 1/2 inch-ish. So I'm going to take half of these and the other half. Now I know that these dough pieces look very small, but that's what we want. You want the sugary goodness in every bite, not just a little bit around the edges of a big ball of bread. So we're just gonna float them in there and scoop them out. Shloop. Now the savory half is going to have an extra step because we're going to roll them in the baking crumbles. So first we're going to just dip in these eggs, and then we're going to pull them out into the bacon. It's not going to stick to every side. We just want a little bit to make sure it all gets mixed in and we don't end up with all the bacon in one spot. So now this whole baby is going to go in the fridge overnight and it'll be ready to bake in the morning. I will pour the last of the goopy stuff over the top right before I bake it. Good morning. This was in the fridge all night last night, and I pulled it out about an hour ago and I put it in the food dehydrator because that's where I like to raise my bread. If you have a warm house, you could just leave it out on the counter and it would keep rising there as well. I'm going to go ahead and pour the last little bit of these eggs over the top, and I'm going to cover it with foil so that the eggs don't get all dry and crusty while it bakes. And then we're going to bake it at 350 for about ½ an hour. I hope I can get this all to stay in. This is getting very full. Let's see if we can get this big mama in the oven. Okay, this has been in here for ½ an hour, and I just peeled the foil off because it's still super goopy and I want to make sure everything does get cooked all the way. We're only at 150 degrees, so it's still going to need some more time. All right, here it is. We're going to turn it out on a plate and cover it in cream cheese frosting because we can. Oh man, look at that. Obviously it doesn't really need frosting. It has plenty on here, but I have some left over from the last time I made cinnamon rolls, so why not? Just let it melt down all over that gooey goodness. Okay, let's take this right out of the edge here with the 2 sides. Riley is very concerned because she heard me say I was going to cover it. She doesn't want it covered. It's a whole thing. All right, we've got our eggs in here and our sugar on that side. Oh, look at that. You ready for it?
Yeah.
Is it delicious? What do you think?
Good.